So, hi everyone, afternoon, and welcome to our presentation about emerging clouds with microsegmentation. My name is Noha Amin, Information Security Officer at Handelsbank in UK. Before we start, I would like to thank Arab EmTech for inviting me to speak in this esteemed event. Therefore, I would like to express my appreciation to both Rami Adamati and Iman Hirawi and all the team behind the scene for their outstanding efforts throughout this event journey. So let's start. But before we start, I'd like to copy a quote of one of the big cybersecurity leaders who said, one single vulnerability is all an attacker needs, which is true. Okay, and now let's think together what security threats does an organization need to prepare for when migrating to the cloud? It's a difficult question, don't you agree? I will leave you to think about it and reflect this into your business security architecture and think about these threats. On the agenda for today, we will explore together what is microsegmentation and why microseg and how. Also, we will see together coronavirus pandemic effect on remote working. On the other hand, we will see together common mistakes during implementation and the zero trust security model. Also, the automation increase as a need for microsegmentation. Before you leave homes, we will not let you go back with empty hands. We will give you some key takeaways with you. Okay, let's start. What is microsegmentation? As we can understand from its name, microsegmentation is a method to create zones into data centers and cloud environments. Why? To isolate these workloads and secure them. Microsegmentation uses applications policies rather than hardware settings for firewalls or VLANs to control and create the most logical units. If we look at the traditional segmentation, the network are divided into subnets of related components, like subnet for web server, subnet for databases, and so on, which is used by security architects due to sophisticated cyber attacks on perimeter network. This traditional model works on what we call it north-south traffic, which means client-server communication across the security border. But with today's hybrid cloud architecture, we can see most traffic flows east-west, which means server to server between applications. And here we are with the new microsegmentation concept. So we can say it manages the traffic between servers, I mean server to server in the same network segment. In other words, microsegmentation is an intra-segment traffic in which server A can talk to server B, or application A can communicate with host B, and so on, as long as the identity of the requesting resource, whether it is a server or application or host or a user, it matches the configured permission of the resource. So why microsegmentation and how it secures the cloud? Let's see north-south versus east-west. So we need to build a microsegmentation strategy in which networks can be broken down into multiple segments to be safe against potential breaches by attackers. Microsegmentation is a very helpful, by the way, for dynamic adaptation within VMs and the workloads. Accordingly, unlike north-south communications, the east-west traffic is usually not subject to firewall inspection, and it is not visible to the network security team. But microsegmentation gives this visibility into the network traffic. There are tangible benefits for microsegmentation, which is reducing the attack surface and improve the breach control, and also strong compliance posture and policy management. We can say that traditional firewalls can remain in place to enable security at the perimeter network. I mean, north-south defense. In addition to that, microsegmentation restricts the unwanted communication between workloads, I mean, east-west traffic. We can call this model zero trust security model, which address the network attacks where attackers penetrate the perimeter and wait before deploying their attacks. Remember, we need to know that microsegmentation doesn't actually reduce the threat of cyber attacks, but it reduces the access of the attackers to a small segment of the organization. For example, administrators can monitor and secure access control to restrict permissions once the workload is complete. By enforcing segmentation with encryption at workload or application level, security architects can hide sensitive packets so the damage would be contained to that small area. Let's see together the coronavirus pandemic effect or influence on remote working. For sure, pandemic gives us a new work model, which we call it new normal, where organizations' network infrastructure supports working remotely. So microsegmentation is a security technique to enable security policies to be assigned to data center application down to workload level. One major benefit of the microsegmentation is it integrates security directly to the virtualized workload without requiring hardware-based firewall. That means that the policies that we are creating can be synchronized with the virtual machine, VMs, operating systems, or other virtual security targets. In fact, microsegmentation has become a business enabler. As a result, any threat to confidentiality, integrity, or availability of the data or the system is a business risk, which must be mitigated indeed. The beauty of microsegmentation is it creates application-aware policies which travel with the application and services. I mean, when a potential breach will be contained to that affected asset only, not the entire network. Another driver for change is operational efficiency. Access control list and firewall policies introduce a lot of management overhead, making policies very difficult to scale in rapidly changing environments. I can say that security tools that rely on the IP addresses or ports or protocols are not fit to protect cloud environments. The dynamic nature of cloud makes this static security and access controls unreliable because they can change at any time or multiple times a day. Let's see together some common mistakes while we implementing the microsegmentation. Why? Because if we learn from others or from other mistakes, it will be like lesson learned for us on how to build our strategy to utilize the microsegmentation. In physical network environment, network tied to specific hardware boxes. Security for this model is usually implemented on a hardware-based firewall. Yet in the virtual environment, architects can create secure policies assigned to virtual connection, which can move with the application if the network is reconfigured. So some mistakes during the implementation. Number one, the primary mistake to avoid when it comes to microsegmentation is assuming that segmentation is where your strategy stops. To understand risk, you must understand the relationships between and inside segments that you create. Number two, adding unnecessary complexity, because complexity is the enemy of security. When you manage solutions, applications, and services, we need to keep it uncomplex while being effective. Number 3, managing microsegmentation policies manually. We need to know that a lot of policies have to be created and managed for microsegmentation to be effective. So doing it manually, it will be too complex and time-consuming. Number 4, for example, it's possible to deny someone access to database in Amazon or Azure, for example, that they normally would be authorized to access if they are requesting access from a device that doesn't have the latest security patch. This one is requesting access from an overseas location, for example. Number 5, failing to define team roles. We need to ask ourselves, do microsegmentation tasks belong to the network organization or for security team? Is it a risk function or something else? So we need to identify the ownership. Number 6, using network topology and address-based controls. These approaches are still not secure. For example, addresses cannot be authenticated or suitable for cloud environments. So let's see now microsegmentation versus VLANs and access list. In legacy network-based segmentation, solutions depends on firewall, which use network addresses to enforce rules. This is a real problem because networks change continuously, which means policies must be updated as applications and devices move. These updates are a challenge for the on-prem data center and even more in cloud environments. And here we find the East-West policy control provide a scalable way to create a secure perimeter zone. This enhances and extends the visibility and control from network or zone-based firewalls. Also, network segmentation is a concept of taking a large group of hosts and create smaller groups of hosts that can communicate to each other. The smaller groups of hosts each has defined security controls, and groups are independent of each other. The goal of network microsegmentation is to provide more security and reduce an attacker capability to easily compromise an entire network. So, if an attacker is successful in compromise a host, they will be limited to only the network segment in this host. Imagine that you configure your network with microsegmentation that this host resides in a microsegment. Then the attacker is restricted to only that host. Okay, now let's see together firewall policy before microsegmentation. Why? As the first line of defense for data, firewalls handle huge amount of traffic for business every day. This makes it vital to protect the data center and the customer's personal data. However, microsegmentation is an ideal way to install security policies to help improve these firewalls and create more secure hybrid cloud environment to keep traffic safer and block the potential breach from corrupting the servers. Staff training? Why? First of all, we need to answer this question. At what layer do we deliver microsegmentation and security to each workload? It's actually extend to layer 7. So visibility and control processes at this level require high level of skills to design and build the strategy. On the other hand, we should know that policy life cycle management is the most challenging part of implementing an effective microsegmentation strategy that supports changes to the application. We can see here that staff training is a vital and crucial part when we aim to implement microsegmentation strategy. To be able to manage a project for microsegmentation and security architect could support the effective design, the organization needs the microsegmentation to be well suited. The security team should be trained enough to design the model, deploy the control, handle discussion, and doing awareness to stakeholders who work outside the security team. Their buy-in is required, by the way, in an effective network microsegmentation strategy. The security team may be expected to take responsibility to ensure all stakeholders understand how all the application and business pieces work together. So we can see here that training and awareness at all levels in the organization is a very important piece of the puzzle. Zero trust security model. How to protect against data breaches. Microsegmentation work in something we call it zero trust security model. With microsegmentation, IT and security teams can tailor the security settings to different type of traffic, and then create policies which can limit network and application flows between workloads to those which are permitted. Example, if we are talking about health industry, for example. So medical devices can talk only to other medical devices. And if a device or workload move, the security policies move with it. By applying segmentation rules down to the workload level or application, IT reduce the attack surface and then reduce the risk of this attacker moving from one compromised workload or application to another. Automation increases the need for microsegmentation. Why? As we know, the virtual machines means that a single server can host hundreds of workloads. Each VM or workload has its own security requirements. For such type of environments, it requires more security going down to the workload level. That's what microsegmentation is all about. Implementation phases. So actually microsegmentation implementation itself can generally be broken down into some phases. First thing is to find and identify all the application running in the data center. Define which application need to be able to communicate with each other. Develop a hierarchy of logical groups to create security policies. Once the logical grouping are defined, policies can be created and tested. The design should enable monitoring of every port and all east-west traffic. So now it's time for takeaways. The first step is to build a microsegmentation strategy by identify high-value assets and consider the following for these critical assets in your organization. Support for all environments and platforms, application dependency mapping, vulnerability mapping, security policy creation and management. And also other key takeaway is to build a blueprint for microsegmentation, but bear in mind, you need to know what your traffic flows are and what are the traffic that should be allowed. Once you have this information, you can then establish where to place the borders between the microsegments in the data center and how to plan and manage the security policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really on time, even with the delay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
ميرسي جدا. شكرا.
الله يعطيك العافية. السلام عليكم.
شكرا. مع السلامة.